Good afternoon, everyone. We're just gonna start pretty quick here. I was note that my monitor isn't on. Is it plugged in or? Okay, so barring that, we'll kick off at 10:02 today. Hello, everyone. So we'll call to order. I'd like to recognize that we are conducting our business today on the territories of the Hoopachisit and the Shot First Nations principally, and we'd like to acknowledge and appreciate that fact. Since our meeting is in a hybrid format, however, we do have people coming to us live from various territories, mostly Nuu-chah-nulth, as far as I can tell, but some folks may be somewhere on the Coast Salish side, depending on where they're at the moment. With that in mind, what we'll do is we'll do a round of introductions. We don't have anybody in the gallery today, but people can register to attend, to be an attendee on Zoom, as well as view what's going on YouTube. At the end of the day, or at the end of this meeting, we'll check to see if there's any questions or comments, and so on and so forth. But with that in mind, we'll do a round of introductions in here, and then we'll ask to do the same online. So we'll start and go to our left. Please go ahead.
Good morning, I'm Daniel Sayan, the CAO for the ACRD.
Yes, and good morning. Tom Steer, appointed director for the District of Tofino.
Jack McClellan, alternate director for Beaufort.
Good morning, everyone. With Clama Mariah Coots for the Hutchins Tribe Government, Cleco, Ju.
Good morning, I'm Mike Sparrow. I'm the director for Cherry Creek.
Hello, everyone. Aklama Petticote. I'm the Sprout Lake Electoral Area Director on this board.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cindy Solda, City Councilor, and I'm the alternate for DEM.
Yeah. Good morning, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Good morning, Planning Manager Alex Dyer.
Good morning, everyone. Mike Hurd, General Manager of Planning and Development.
Good morning, everyone. Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services.
And I am John Jack. I'm the chair for the regional district. We'll go online and I'll just call out names. Take a look at the thing. Please go ahead, Susan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Roth, and I am the director for Beaver Creek.
Thank you. Bob?
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Bob Beckett, Area A, Bamfield.
Marilyn?
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
And Vida?
Yeah, Happy New Year, Beta Siga, Area C rep.
Thank you. Levana?
Good morning, Levana Mastrangelo from Ucluelet First Nation. Not too sure if my camera's working or not.
It was, and then it kind of died. So it's okay though. We can see that you're talking when it happens.
Thanks.
Okay. Kristen?
Morning, Kirsten Johnson with the Dokwat Nation. I have a bad cold, so I'll be keeping my camera off.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's why Terry is not in the room today, but she is in the office from what I see. We do have other members of the staff who are online, but they can introduce themselves when they come into focus. Okay, so with that in mind, we do have an agenda here. First of which is the approval of the agenda. I do not believe that there are any new materials or new items to add to the agenda, so we could have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Thank you, Director Cote and Director Sparrow. Any further comment? Director McClellan, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. First of all, why is the item in camera for the drag races? It looks to me like it's all over town. There's no secrets. So I'm just wondering if there's a reason it's in camera.
I believe it has to do with the land labor legal item. Yeah. So go ahead.
It is there for a reason, and we'll discuss that when it's in camera, but it is land and negotiations are the categories.
Okay, so with that, are there any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to declarations. Does anyone have any declarations of conflict of interest in regards to the SIPs or PICs? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Item 4, the minutes. This is the adoption of the minutes for the committee of the whole meeting dated December 11th, 2024. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Move to receive from Director Cote. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, before we get to the item here, we did a round of introductions, and I'd like to say that Director Patola is here. So do you want to say hello? Go ahead.
Hello.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Todd. That brings us to there are no petitions, delegations, or presentations. There's no correspondence. And in terms of requests for decisions, there's only one item, but it has multiple like proposed initiative cases. So what we'll do is we'll hear on each of them, and then either we can take it on a case-by-case basis, or we can hear them all first, depending on the amount of work that's been done by each of the directors on reviewing what's here. So I'll take your initiative as we go through them, but we'll go through them in order, have them presented, and then we can have comments and see what's what. Okay, Director McClellan, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. I've been asked to ask this one. What is the, or have you got a percentage increase already in the budget without looking at any of these?
Okay, with that, I'll ask Terry. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I can intro the whole thing at the same time, but no, we do not have a set percentage. We're working our way through. Again, in a regional district model, we don't end up with one percentage. We end up with 14 percentages for the 14 different areas, and we're not quite there yet. We're looking to look at this piece first. But to introduce the whole topic, just wanted to point out that this is really the kickoff to our 2025 to 2029 financial plan season. And as Director Jack pointed out, I am starting the season out sick, so not the best start to the budget process, but it waits for no one. So we'll try not to let my foggy head get in our way today. We have presented 21 proposed initiative cases for you, PICs today. They're somewhat like business case. We developed them in 2024 to help kind of create the discussion with the board regarding balancing competing priorities. And the feedback after last year was quite positive, so we thought we'd try the process again this year. So these PICs are not for like routine operational costs that are up and running services that have defined service levels. And it also is not any of the initiatives that have already been kicked off but are in progress or have been approved previously. So what is a PIC in terms of the ACRD? We've developed PICs when there is a change in level of service for a particular service area. So animal control is an example today of a PIC that you will see that's based on a service level change. It's also a project that is not required by legislation. So if we have had something come down the pipe that is a legislative requirement, we do not include that as a PIC because it's not discretionary. It just needs to be included in the budget. But an example of a change that is not required would be the agricultural zoning changes that the Electoral Area Committee have had discussions about. It's also including new assets that are not included in asset management plans. So at the Long Beach Airport, we're looking at a possible new larger terminal building to accommodate passenger flow there. And the final kind of fourth area of what would be defined as a PIC is a feasibility study. So the Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility feasibility study that was done over the last couple of years is a good example of that. So each PIC will be presented and discussed separately. And at that time, staff will be looking for a resolution as to whether the directors support the inclusion of the initiative into the draft financial plan or not. These PICs will continue to be discussed throughout the financial planning process that goes until the end of March. And saying yes today does not necessarily mean it will be part of the adopted financial plan. There's still lots of opportunity to discuss and remove and change. So please be reminded that they are just presented by staff today does not mean they all need to be a yes. Saying no is okay and expected in some cases. There is also the option for you to say yes, but for a future year. We are developing a 5-year plan. So if you really want to get it on the plan, but you recognize there's not really time or money to do it this year, then you could ask for the PIC to be put into the 2026 financial plan year. So again, this is really just used to generate conversation kind of around the emerging or up and coming topics that we are hearing. And if you are looking for more information, like we did not deep dive, that we tried to keep them to 2 pages. So we did not deep dive into these topics. So if you are needing more information, we definitely can come back with a more fulsome report, but we would request a little bit of direction as to like what kind of more information are you looking for so that we are sure that we can bring it back to you in a timely manner. In the RFD itself, I have also provided a list of the ongoing or previously approved initiatives with a little bit of a brief status update on those, just so you can get a gauge of the current workload and make sure that if something was missing from what you thought was a PIC, that maybe it was already on our work plan. So there was lots of those to look at. And then also note that there are 4 PICs that were kind of, we didn't include at this meeting because we're kind of in the middle of something and need to wrap it up. So one of those, for example, is Fire Smart, which will be discussed at this afternoon's board meeting. So there are those 4 that are kind of still floating out there. Yeah, so unless there's any questions about the process itself, then I'm happy to turn it back over to the chair and we can start with PIC number 1.
Okay, thank you. Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. So looking at these PICs, I find it interesting that for Sprout Lake, a snowblade, purchase of a snowblade is on this. And I don't imagine that the board is paying for this. I imagine that I'm assuming that it's just Sprout Lake taxpayers. So I would have liked to have seen how these things are divided up as far as who's paying for what, rather than it just being all here.
So at the top of each PIC, there is like the individual PIC reports themselves. The service area is identified. Some of them say multiple because like the ACRD owned building energy audits, instead of giving you a PIC for each building and each service, we just did 1 PIC for you. But and the one says governance because we don't actually have a structure for that yet. But for the most part, it will tell you at the top of it what service area that we are talking about. As well in the table that is on page 11 and 12 of your agenda that summarizes the 21, the second column is the service area. So it identifies what service area and therefore what taxpayers are paying for it. So these are a variety of things from general government to South Long Beach Fire Protection to Bamfield Community Emergency Planning. So all sorts of different services involved.
Thank you. Director McClellan? Sorry, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw you move your. No?
Good.
Okay. All right, Director Cote, follow up, go ahead.
Thank you. So just for that, I find it interesting, I guess, that something like a snowblade for the fire department is in the PICs, and don't know why it's not put into the fire Sprout Lake Fire Department budget as a option in there rather than for the whole board? Thanks.
So that's what this is doing. This is identifying the things that are out of the norm. So like using the snow blade example, snow clearing and salting has always been done by a contractor, for example, for most of our facilities, including Sprout Lake. So this is really a pivot in how we deliver service. It will then require manpower to operate the snow blade. There's risk involved in whether they clear the snow or don't clear the snow. And so it's not as simple as like a replacement of an existing thing. There's actually some staff time and some implications to it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to take out of the full budget. Like what we used to do is we'd put all this stuff in here and present you the financial plan with all of the initiatives that we thought the board was wanting to see all lumped together. But then when it was really hard to peel them back out. So now what we do is before we plunk them all into the budget, like if you approve that pick today, it will get plunked into the budget. If before we do that, we say these are all the things that are going to have impacts on top of what your routine increases are. And we just want to have a discussion about them in advance. So it's not necessarily taking away any power. It's just really trying to separate what's new and upcoming from like routine, like you don't see their like gear replacement, for example, that would never come in as a pick because they're just replacing it. But because this is really a pivot on how they're delivering service out there, it ended up qualifying in staff's mind.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Dr. Solda.
Oh, thank you. I want to talk about economic development services that the city offers. Is this the time to do this? or-
No, I don't think so. I think what we'll do is we'll go through in order, and then
Okay.
since it's pretty high up there, we'll get there pretty quick.
You bet.
So, yeah.
So just remember that I want to have that dialogue. Thank you.
So this is just a general commentary about the entire process. Does anybody have anything they want to? Okay. One thing I did forget to ask about is, does anybody have any time constraints? Does anyone have to leave before noon? Because then we can make sure that we have a discussion on your item before we get there. Susan or Dr. Roth, go ahead.
Sorry, 1 second here. I have something going on that might need me, I might need to leave all of a sudden, so I'll just let you know on the chat.
Okay, that would be good. And if there's anything like, if you need to leave, but you want to talk to an item first, you can just interrupt and then ask for that to be the next item.
Okay, thank you.
And same holds true for anybody who needs to leave. But it doesn't look like anybody does, so I think we're okay. Okay, so barring any other conversations about the general approach, I'm wondering if we can start up into the first one and then go through each of them. I would note that it is currently 10:19, which means that we have an hour and 40 minutes, which is what, 100 minutes? 100 minutes divided by 20 is 5. So let's take about 4 minutes on each of these things. So just
What,
for
only
people.
1 minute for the snow blade.
I'll
I'll give away my minutes.
Hold them judiciously. Yeah, I yield my time to director. Okay, anyway, with that in mind, I'd like to ask maybe Daniel, if you want to kick us off, and then maybe throw it to the person you need to. Oh, it is here. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. I'll be really brief. So the first one is ACRD owned building energy audits. The ACRD in 2024 adopted the corporate energy and emissions plan, and this is really the next step in doing the energy audits to identify where efficiencies and upgrades or retrofits can apply. And this applies to the most used ACRD buildings. And this would be through grant funded and requiring time from some of the staff identified in the report. And I will stop there and answer any questions.
Just for the benefit of the recording, LGCAP, what does that stand for?
Yeah, Local Government Climate Action Plan.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any comments on item 1? Go ahead, Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. So this will be a grant funded thing and not a tax acquisition funded thing. Is that correct?
Yes, for the energy audits. Yes, we have grant funding for some of them, and then we have the LG cap funding that could do the rest of the buildings if we don't get additional funding.
So it is grant funded. Is that administered through UBCM or just the province directly? Does it matter?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I think it's through the province.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anybody have any further comments? Or, oh, Dr. Roth, please go ahead.
I would like to move that the committee of the whole direct staff to include the proposed initiative case in the 2025 to 29 draft ACRD financial plan. Pick number 1.
Thank you, and seconded by
Second.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. McClellan. Any further comments? Dr. Beckett or Dr. Roth? Yeah, Dr. Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you, Director Roth, for allowing me to go first. I support this 100%. What I would like to see as we get reports back regarding an energy and emissions plan is what, you know, is there a way to make a tangible sorry, I haven't had my second cup of coffee yet, so I'm a little foggy as well, Terry. Is there a way to predict the cost savings associated to acting on an energy audit? So, you know, I agree maintaining status quo is not good. So we take this study, we spend X amount of money. I'd like to be able to identify to the taxpayer that actually it was well spent, and that, you know, we predict that there'll be X dollars saved. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, that would be included in the individual audits.
Okay, as they're complete. That's great. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 2, Economic Development Services Establishment. Daniel, please go ahead.
Thank you. So this PIC identifies a service follow-up to the grant and aid policy that was just revised in 2024. When we redid the grant and aid policy, the board directed that they wanted to see economic development as a separate service, not necessarily as grant and aid, so it falls outside. We have within, it's well within our abilities under legislation to create an economic development service. The service would be aimed to foster economic well-being, support local business, attract new investment, and promote sustainable growth. If we were to create a service, we'd be identifying and describing what that service is. We'd be establishing the boundaries and the participants of that service, and we'd be speaking to how cost recovery takes place. Currently, we issue grant and aid for economic development. We give a small portion of funds to the city of Port Alberni, and we also give a $5,000 towards the Vancouver Island Film Commission in film. And the PIC identifies just some of the work that that is done. So in film, for example, in 2024, helped promote $6 million worth of investment in the regional district. And there's a table there that indicates where. In film, on their, this is their table. In film just indicated the urban hubs. So it's just because it says Tofino, it doesn't mean that it wasn't impacting businesses in Area C. And just because it says Port Alberni, it doesn't mean it wasn't positively impacting businesses in the rural areas around Port Alberni. But it just gives an indication of what that service could be fostering, and it would be much more transparent to do it through a service rather than through general governance and grants. The other advantage to doing this would be that we would be able to take some time to clearly identify goals and objectives and the outcomes with regard to economic development that we want to see regionally, and report back on those to the taxpayer. It would also be very clear how much we're putting in, because the service would identify the collection across the region or the sub-region, as the case may be. So Let's see, I will stop right there. And if there's any questions, I will answer them.
Director Silva and then Director McClellan.
So this is probably an ongoing issue, even before when I was on the CRD in years past. But the city would like to see that increase the economic, and we've always asked for that. And there's a lot of things. When you look at the Film Commission, I know Pat Deacon has spent a lot of time doing a lobbying and on behalf of the ACRD. I used to be on the Film Commission, so I do know what the back door looks like. And he spends a lot of hours and on economic development, not just for the city, but for the region. And I think it benefits everybody. It benefits all areas in the long run. And I would like to see that increase. And I'm going to I don't know if Todd Petula would like to make a comment on that too. We're working on the budget and we're doing a lot of cutbacks right now. Our budget is going up like 15-16%. We're trying to bring it down. And Pat has brought in a lower budget, and we would like to see an increase from the region, to be fair. So I don't know if Director Petula wants to make an add-on to this.
We do have a speakers list, but I can put Director Petula after Director Cote.
Good, I just put you on anyways.
I have Director McClellan and then Director Cote. Please go ahead.
First of all, is there a motion on the floor to debate?
There can be, yes, although we're just having a discussion now.
Well, we could talk forever without a motion and nothing will happen. So I would like to move that we do not add number 2 to the agenda and see if it goes anywhere.
Okay, seconded by Director Roth. All right, thank you. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. Seems that nothing changes and everything changes. The Economic Development Commission used to be, and it used to be run by the regional district, who got very frustrated with it and canceled it and asked the city if they would do it. And specifically, the director who used to sit in this chair was the driving force to have it eliminated. And that, I'm not talking about Director Boyko, but Director Kokura. And him and I, Director Kokura, and I sat on the Economic Development Commission for quite a few years together. And there were some very frustrating times and some very good times, but it became a money issue that just people couldn't justify. So really, if you can't do anything else, maybe you got to do it. But it looks like a growth industry once you start it. You get an Economic Development Commission. Most towns do it through their city hall for the whole area, and that would be the several halls we have in our regional district. So that's just my suggestion, and I know the director I'm representing, taking the place of, has asked me to oppose it, but I would anyway because of the history.
Thank you. Director Cote and then Director Petula, then Director Silva.
Thank you. I don't understand why the economic development is linked in with InFilm. I think they're two separate budget items. InFilm, I'm not sure if it's coming forward. So can you explain that? Thank you.
Yeah, Infield is just one of the two that we currently provide a grant to. The reason why it's identified is that they produced a report that was much easier for me to summarize and put into a short pick. But the other thing is that they are requesting the ability to enter into a 3-year agreement as opposed to doing annual requests. The annual requests are labor intensive. They're labor intensive for them. They're labor intensive for us. And for the funds that they're receiving in order to bring that back, it's more efficient if it was done differently. Now they are an example, and I think the city is speaking to their example as well. But the reason why it's coming forward is that right now we're doing it we're doing it through grants under general governance, which is not the right tool. So the legislation explicitly gives us the ability to develop a service for economic development. So it's not often that legislation will say, if you're doing this, then use that tool. The right tool really is the development of a service. So if we're going to go down the path of supporting economic development in whatever shape or form, the better tool is a service. Now, it doesn't mean that we're identifying how much in that service we're drawing from. That would be a different discussion as we create the service. This pick is about moving forward and creating the service in 2025.
Thank you. Is that clear?
Follow up. So at this point, we don't have a service developed. So that would take time. We have to go to referendum or alternate approval or however we want to get to create a service. So this year, in my opinion, I don't see that these can be linked together at all to be approved because we don't have the service. So, and I've always been told, you know, regional districts, the money for one service goes into an envelope. You can't take money from this and put it with that. So my mind doesn't marry these two together. Thank you.
So as a status quo would be through grant and aid. Now, the new grant and aid policy doesn't contemplate economic development as a service, so that becomes a problem. Now, it is a policy and the board can alter that policy and bridge a year in a different way and repeat what it did last year, for example, if it so chooses. But what we're doing is really all of these things are about tidying up the grant and aid policy. We did the first big step in 2024. The next step would be if we're going to properly place economic development into the funds that we spend every year, which we have been spending every year, it should be through a service, not through general governance and grant and aid. Now, that's a journey, right? So it doesn't, like, we're not talking about whether to give money to the city or to Infilm. That's not the subject of this, and I just use it as an example. Perhaps I shouldn't have. The point is that there are applicants every year, and the point is that there's a better way to do it when it comes to economic development.
Quickly.
I mean, you know.
Yeah, sorry. So I realize, you know, thank you for Terry in the past identifying these things, but it seems to me that this is a bigger conversation than a pick. And I'm wondering why we hadn't discussed this earlier in the process to start creating service. Yeah.
I'll
stop.
cut you up there. This is the earliest time in the process. This is the beginning of all of these processes, okay? So if you want to be forewarned, then we'll try to think on that, but the materials were sent out on time. So this is the beginning. We're discussing that. Okay. Terry, go ahead.
Just that this pick is to have the conversation in 2025 about possibly developing a service. It's not to get to the end of developing a service. It's, do you want to take the time as a group to discuss the possibility of developing a service and what direction that goes in? So it's not saying we will get to a service in the end. Maybe we end up having the discussion about what would be framed in it and we can't come to a consensus. It's just, do you want to talk about possibly creating an ECDEV service? And we do have some powers under our letters patent that we might be able to use, but we would need to explore that more. But this really is the first step of, do you even want to have the conversation during the year? Because that's not a quick, like, one report conversation. That's going to take some time. So that is what this pick is about, do you want to create space for that conversation?
Because creating that space will cost an X number of hours and dollars. Thank you for being patient, Director Patella. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Don't really have much to add, except to say that if we don't consider the service and have discussions about the pros and cons and how the service can benefit the region, then we're going to miss out on many opportunities for economic development and for increasing the revenue to the district without increasing the tax base or the tax demand request, whatever the word is. So I would be voting against Director McClellan's motion. I absolutely think that establishing a discussion for the service is a necessity, because to continue in the same manner that we are right now which apparently we can't, but by using these grants and aid, what we do is we create a situation that encourages double dipping into the resources of the region for anybody that wants to promote their particular economic plan, for example, in film, to then go to many different sources and request money from many different pockets instead of having a unified, centralized, organized system for the development of, in this case, in film, but in any other case, within the entire region. So we're basically encouraging double dipping and doubling up, tripling up wasted time and energy. It's just simply inefficient. So I'm not for inefficiencies. I'm against them. So I would vote against Mr. Director McClellan's motion.
All right, thank you. I have Director Solda.
Just an add-on too with regarding our economics. There's a lot of things happening in our region, not just in the Alberni Valley, but the whole region, and it will affect the whole region regarding the forest industry, what's going on, and who knows when and what the tariffs will be in the future for us. And if you think the one industrial group, I'm not going to name names, is having their issues right now, it's already affecting our last major industry in our community and businesses too. And it's not just our businesses, it's the West Coast businesses. And so I think economic development will be very important for us in the region. And we see the mom and pops operations throughout the region having their issues and with the costs escalating just to do business and when you go to the grocery stores and stuff like that, what you get in your baskets now is not the same thing. And I think economic we have to put that forward more. And I believe that we should be helping out with the economic a little more in the ACRD. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, I have Director Roth.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out that I don't think we need to create a new service area for this. I think that grants could easily be discussed in a regular board meeting or in a board meeting for this type of initiative. So I don't like the idea of creating another service area. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roth. Next up is Director Steer.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. I just would speak to the motion that's on the table, and the one area that I think we do have options are, and I looked at Terry in her introduction, is we don't have to approve it for 2025. If there would be an open conversation, this could be deferred to another taxation year, potential service delay on this, pressing pause for 2025 budget, and could be something that is initiated in the 2026 if there are concerns about the potential increases to taxes in this particular fiscal year.
Thank you, Director Steer. Seeing no other comments, I think what I'd like to reiterate is the conversations that we've constantly had over the past, at least in my mind, 10 years or so, is that doing economic development off the side of the desk of grants and aid, which is already a really flawed system, is probably not the way to go. And that if we believe in economic development as a thing, and usually the function of economic development in local government forms is to identify why things are changing and where they're going. And sometimes the reason why something is changing, like the forestry industry or other things, isn't always apparent on the first face of it. And so having somebody who's dedicated in understanding what are the changes and why are they happening and what may happen in the future, given what the province or the federal government may do, can be quite valuable, because then it informs the kinds of decisions that we need to make at a local government level. So economic development is very near and dear to my heart. And I do think that the value that economic development brings to the region is very valuable. I do think, though, that the economics of the West Coast are somewhat different than the Alberni Valley and beyond, but that's something that we can discuss in the future. So I do think that it is warranted to actually go ahead with pick number 2, mostly because I think that we do not necessarily define what the service is going to look like, and we're not guaranteeing that the city is going to see an increase in what the regional district gives. That's a different conversation. That's a different fight for later. But this is about, do we even want to have the conversation? And I think we should take the time to have a more fulsome conversation about economic development as a service, and then go into whether or not we want to do it once we define what it should be in the best case scenario or the most acceptable case scenario. And we haven't even done that yet. So I would not go for not including this as something that we talk about in the next year. I would go for something as in we would include it in the next year, because time is of the essence, because the year after is an election year. So that's just going to be grandstanding at that point. So I think we should have the conversation now to actually have a conversation about economic development and its place in the region. And I will not have any other comments after this. I'd like to go to a vote. Okay, please go ahead, Dr. Silva.
Sorry, I'm not sure of your process. So, okay, so the amount of an increase, like instead of 10,000, if we wanted to increase it, this is not the
No,
time.
that's just the cost of the conversation. This is just the cost of the conversation
Got it.
for each of these cases. This is not even saying we're going to do these things in a lot of these cases. Now, it is about doing the thing when we're talking about purchasing a snow blade, but when we're talking about the service establishment, that's a conversation. It will be evident in the materials as well.
Super. I just needed to understand that. Thank you.
Okay, so with that in mind, the motion is to not include proposed initiative case 02, and that was moved by Director McClellan and seconded by Director Roth. So with that in mind, could we have all those in favor of not including PIC 2? Okay, we have 3. All those in favor or not in favor? Okay. Motion carried, or motion not carried. All right. With that in mind, go ahead, Dr. Patella.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 02 Economic Development Service Establishment in the 2025 to 2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
I'll second that.
Is that Dr. Silva? Yeah. Okay, that's moved and seconded. Comments, Dr. McClellan, go ahead.
I'd request a recorded vote, please.
Okay, did you want a recorded vote for the first one as well?
No.
No? Okay. Dr. Cote?
Do we have a cost for what this process will be?
It's literally on the thing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, any further comments? Okay, so this will be a recorded vote. So all of those in favor of including PIC 2. I'll start in the room. So Dr. Steer, Dr. Patella, Dr. Coots, Dr. Sparrow, Dr. Cote, Dr. Solda, Dr. Jack, and then online we have Dr. Johnson and Director Mastrangelo and Director McEwen. Oh, and Director Beckett. I assume that those are hands up and not wanting to speak. Okay, and then all opposed. Okay, I have Dr. McClellan, Dr. Roth, and Director Siga. And Director Keating. All right, any further comments? Okay, I'll declare the motion carried. Thank you. And that brings us into the next item. And who's speaking to that? Directors? Director. Heather, please go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so this pick is related to hiring a consultant to conduct a review of ACRD's records management system in 2025 for an estimated cost of $30,000. So is a local government required to maintain a records management system with a varying retention schedule depending on the type of record? We use a combination of paper and electronic files to store records, including bylaws, contracts, permits, emails, photographs, electronic files, audio recordings, video recordings. The electronic filing software system that we use is not very user-friendly and can only be utilized by a few staff. We also utilize a significant amount of office space in this office to store paper copies of files that, if digitized, could free up office space. The fire departments are also not well integrated with our regional district filing system. The risk to the regional district is related to compliance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. When we receive a Freedom of Information request from the public, currently our process is very lengthy and labor intensive to have staff review their files and emails to search for records. And there is a risk that we could miss some of those records. So we anticipate that a portion of the cost of this project could be covered by grant funds through the Municipal Insurance Association. And I will welcome any questions.
Thank you. Director Roth, please go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to move that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to delay consideration of proposed initiative case 3 records management asset to the 2026 proposed initiative case discussion. And this is mostly to do with rising taxes. We've got to try and not raise them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Director McClellan. And further comment, Dr. Patella and then Director Steer.
Well, I was going to make the opposite motion, so all I need to say now is I would vote against the motion on the floor. Reducing liabilities is reducing taxes. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Steer.
I think that does somewhat answer the question that I was going to bring forward. But I did have one quick question in terms of the expediency of this. Is this something that staff, in their opinion, feel that is imperative to have done at this point in time?
I think this project definitely needs to be done, but if the board was looking to delay by a year, that would be acceptable. I just want to understand the board to understand that this is something important that does need to be completed.
Thank you, Director Coots and Director Cote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to Terry, perhaps my apologies if this is not something that we know currently. As I see a little bit further down in some of our other items, there is a percentage breakdown. I'm just curious, we have a rough idea of what the potentially grant funding percentages might be. Are we looking at like 10 to 15%? Are we looking at 35 to 50, more perhaps? Thank you. Shoo.
For this one, we're thinking that we can probably get 50%. We have to present, so the Municipal Insurance Association helps to support initiatives that reduce our risk level. So we do have to kind of get a quote first and then present it to them, and they will provide us guidance based on other initiatives that we've provided in the past. Heather and I are thinking around 50%. So we think we could get about $15,000 for this one. Would be our best guess.
Thank you, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Just wanted to also identify MIA grant and that they do provide these grants to provide risk to abate risk for our area. And I understand this would help out the fire departments in their recording, and it's about safety for all those members. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Director Cote. Director Roth.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if I can make an amendment to my motion and make it subject to securing 50% grant funding for 2025 to 2029 draft financial plan.
Is that okay with Director McClellan, I think? So if you got 50% off, do it this year?
I'm not sure what the amendment means. But yeah, go with it and see what happens.
I think the amendment would be, instead of delaying to the next year, that so you would delay to the next year unless you get a grant this year, then you would do it this year.
That confused the whole world, but if you can get a grant and it doesn't cost this taxpayer as much as the taxpayer is paying for the grants, remember that.
Through the province, though. So I like to think that Vancouver mostly pays for it. So with that in mind, though, is that an all right amendment? Or do you want to?
I'm not sure it's a legal amendment because the movie would make it, but I'm not sure I'm not right or wrong.
So our procedure would be to go with the motion as it is and then defeat it, and then Director Roth could put a new motion on the floor. Or you could, I can't remember what the term is, retract it as the mover and then just put a new one on the floor. But we'd still have to have a vote to do it anyways. So like it's all procedurally pretty much the same. Yeah. So let's have a vote on this one. And then if we want to see if we can get a grant, we'll just defeat this one and then move another one. And we'll just go right to Dr. Roth after that. Is that all right? Dr. Roth? Yeah, it's the same amount of time. So all those in favor of the original motion of delaying to 2026? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, motion defeated. And then Director Roth, the motion would be to delay until 2026 unless a grant for 50% was acquired for this upcoming fiscal year for 2025. And that's seconded by Director, no, comment. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Any further comments? Dr. Patella, please go ahead.
Just logic. This isn't even legal logic. This is just logic. How can you have a discussion to apply for a grant if you're not going to have the discussion until you get the grant? You're in a circular logical pattern. You either have to say, we're going to approve adding this pick in, or we're not. And then that just starts the discussion. I think many of the conceptualizations of what we're doing here is putting the cart before the horse. All of these motions are just about, do you want to start a discussion? So you can't say, we're only going to start a discussion if we start a discussion and get money to start the discussion. It's nonsensical.
Thank you. Dr. Fung, would it take 90 hours to put together a grant application?
No, this is fine. I think if we get this direction, we can approach MIABC and give them the details of what we want to do and get their approval in principle for us to proceed, and then we can go from there. So yeah, no, I think this motion to do it in 2025 if 50% grant funding found will work for us. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. And see, obviously my hand up. I the same thing that Director Patola said, is the fact that we're trying to make an avenue for discussion, and then we're trying to put the costing into the discussion before it's time. Should we just say, we want to look at this year, and then later on the budget, maybe a month or two from now, then put in the funding aspects? Because right now we're actually exactly what he's saying. We're putting too many obstacles in front trying to do this, and we're actually going to get out of our budget window before we actually get answers back, and then we're going to be stuck for a year. And this record management, if we get hacked, 30 grand is cheap, real cheap. So,
thank you. Any further comments? Okay, so given the conversation, we'll move on to voting. So all those in favor of the new motion for a conditional delay? That's what it would be. So it's a motion to delay unless. It's a conditional delay. Okay. 6. Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion defeated, 6-6. Okay, with that, that brings us to, there's nothing on the floor now. Would anyone like to move anything? Director Sparrow?
let's try it this way. That the committee of the whole direct staff to include a proposed initiative case 3, records management assessment in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Seconded by Director Patilla. Any further comments? I think we've talked this one out. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 4. That is Cynthia. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this pick is to hire a full-time permanent human resource manager. And as the ACRD organization has grown to over 50 staff members and managing approximately 150 volunteers, naturally, so has the need to hire a human resource professional. So this would be responsible for overseeing the recruitment and retention efforts, as well as ensuring that there are human resource policies to ensure compliance with our legal obligations and to effectively address employee relation matters. So the total cost of this is about $135,000. This is recognizing that this would be a salary and benefits, as well as including staff time to oversee the process. And this would be through tax requisition. I do want to note that there are the financial risks or other risks to the organization of not having a human resource manager. And we would potentially see a reduced turnover costs, improved productivity, compliance and risk management, effective training and staff development. Currently, myself, the General Manager of Administrative Services, is responsible for human resources, as well as the other general managers and managers do oversee other human resource matters within their department, and we also contract services when needed.
Thank you, Cynthia. Do you want to add anything, Daniel, before we go? Okay, thank you. Dr. Solda and then Dr. Roth.
Just a quick question. Who's doing, how many times have we had to contract our services for human services? Or the dollars, maybe a dollar figure would be great too.
Daniel and then whoever else would be invoked. Please go ahead.
I don't have the exact dollar amount, but I think Terry's searching that right now. We use contracted services on various elements of our hiring process, any disciplinary process, any investigations. And so roughly, I would say we use them. We've set up the existing contract where we can have a check-in every Wednesday, so once a week. Now that varies. Some weeks there's nothing, other weeks there's more than a day. So I think it might be easier to look at what the dollar amount spend is. I think the challenge to remember, and I think the thing that is important in this discussion is the changing needs and the desire to properly support not only staff, but our volunteers through the fire departments, which are legally also staff. And I think there's an important cultural shift, whereas 15, 20 years ago, volunteers, if they were unhappy, they just left. Now they understand that they are also employees, and when they're unhappy, they seek to remedy that unhappiness without leaving, which means that we're going through investigations and we're supporting staff and we're facilitating dialogues, and that's labor intensive. On the flip side, that's only what we do when it's a tough snag. But on the flip side is that having an HR manager that can focus on preemptively developing programs to work with people and have that dialogue would actually save us more time on the long run, where we're not doing damage control after the fact. So, but yeah, right now we're just doing damage control and we do it with a contractor. And Terry, do you have a cost?
The cost is actually pretty minimal because I'd say we're just not reaching out. We're kind of leaning on each other and trying to navigate it ourselves. But only about 5,000 to 10,000 a year is what we've been spending over the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you for that. I have Dr. Roth and then Dr. Steele. And then.
Thank you. I'm curious, can we make this a part-time position?
Go ahead.
I'll answer that. Yes, we could start with that. And there's also the option where we could explore reaching out to our municipal counterparts to see if they have any surplus capacity in their HR and look to partner through service agreement.
Thank you. Dr. Steele.
Yeah, thank you. And I think both of these were just answered. We went through this process at the District of Tofino in terms of a human resource manager and all the benefits. There were some challenges with adding another full-time position to the district, as I'm sure everyone at this table is having thoughts of. We went through a long discussion. We did hire a human resource manager, and I can say directly that those benefits have incurred on a number of different levels, not least of which is the recruitment and retention. There's also things like grievance procedures where we have someone dedicated to that process. So it was, as it's turned out, it has become an incredibly valuable position within the District of Tofino. So I am in support of it, and I do like the conversation around maybe there is a conversation around a part-time position that would be more appropriate than an FTE position. So I would be very supportive of a conversation around a part-time position for a human resource manager for the ACRD.
Thank you, Dr. Steele. Next up, I have Dr. McClellan. Did I miss anyone? Okay, thanks.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Not yet, no.
I'd like to make a motion that we make PIC number Number 4, wow, we're there already. A part-time position consider it as a part-time position.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Steer. Dr. Roth, did you have a comment or were you seconding? Okay, so Director Steer got there first. Okay, any further comments? Director Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you. If I can make an amendment to the motion that after 2 years of part-time, the report comes back to see if it's functionally good or if we need to increase or stay the same. You know what I'm saying?
Go ahead.
I appreciate where you're going with that. I do provide regular updates to CAO performance, and I think we can annually come back to review positions regardless. Doesn't hurt to add it, but it will also happen regardless. We'll review and talk about the volume of work, the benefits, and whether we're looking to increase a position or not. Sometimes it's just a matter of retention as well. As we know, sometimes smaller positions are harder to fill, and so we might come back with a different discussion. So either way, I think it'll happen, but I just wanted to add that comment.
Thanks. Does anyone want to second that addition? No? Okay. Director Sparrow seems satisfied. Okay, seems, I'm not, hopefully not speaking for you. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to number 5. Charlie, are you online? Please go ahead.
I am. Good morning. Yes, this pick is for a regional fire service training center. This has been discussed by the chiefs for many years and been kicked around, but nothing official. So this pick means to bring it to the table for discussion. There's no cash outlay this year proposed other than allowing for time to begin investigating this.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments? Dr. Sparrow, please go ahead.
Thank you. You do have the fire training center at Sproul Lake, which I know is not utilized functionally all the time. One of the things about the one on Sproul Lake was, I remember the chief at the time, which was Chris Duncan, was doing this environmental assessment and happened to reach out to the guy from the Ministry of Environment I'm to work with. And they said they're very lucky to get through the environmental assessment out there because of all of the things we're doing. So if you know, I'm going to put this forward to move the regional training center closer in town. I don't think the live fire component is going to be part of it because I don't think you're going to be allowed to get an environmental assessment where you're allowed to burn a carcinogenic material in an urban setting. And that's sort of what they're looking at here, is to move the training center close enough they can utilize it. But I don't think the live fire component will be available to them because of the environmental assessment. But as for the high angle rescue, and that it should work out if they can find a place. Just letting you know that offhand. If Charlie has any comments.
Yeah, I just to follow up on that, this really is designed to, the cost this year is my time. I don't have this as part of my work plan because it's not been official for discussion. And we recognize that it's going to take more time than just off the corner of my desk to begin to do this, and the same for the chiefs. So that's what we're asking for, some initiative to proceed with this as a plan. And it's very early in the planning stages. We would need to find out a site and describe how we're going to do it. So yeah, that's all.
It's taking the time. Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. So if this is what you do already, then why would we be paying more? Would we be asking for a consultant to come in, or I know that Sprout Lake has a fire training center, and I don't believe that it's utilized very much. It has cost Sprout Lake taxpayers a lot of money in the past. I don't know that the other regional fire departments utilize it at all. So I'm just wondering what the cost would be. Thanks.
So it looks like the cost would just be the time because they're not stating any amount of money for the proposed training center. So it'd just be what Charlie and the crew would be just doing the work.
Right. So it's what they're doing anyways.
Sort of, but it's a big chunk of their time. So they're asking if that can be something that they add to their work plan. Is that correct, Terry? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's mostly that if we are going to proceed with it beyond a conversation, we are going to have to create a service for it. And so if the directors are not interested in creating a service eventually for a combined fire training site, then there's no point in them having the conversations. So if there is some interest in building a facility such as Charlie's outlined, and for it to be a joint training facility for those who want to participate, then they will have those conversations. But if in the end the board is not interested and would just like to continue doing what we're doing now, whether that's using the Sprout Lake site or sending the volunteers and members out of town to be trained, then there's no point in proceeding with those conversations. So that is why this got brought forward as a pick.
Right.
You, so I'm assuming then that we would have to hire somebody to run that facility. There would have to be land purchase. There would have to be all kinds of things that would come into play here. Yeah, it seems like a really huge cost to add to our already very large fire department budgets. So if it's just to look at, and I know that this has been a conversation in the past for many, many years. So there must be a lot of that information already pulled together in my assumption.
Recognizing how large an item this is, that's why we're asking for the time to fully investigate it. It would mean finding land, it would mean figuring out how it would be managed and who would participate. And to comment on your past about Sprout Lake, the Sprout Lake site does not get used as much as it could be simply because of its poor location for everybody and the fact that it has been really tough for Sprout Lake to maintain it on their own. So we're looking to move forward from Sprout Lake, and the chief would very much like to move away from Sprout Lake handling a training center on their own.
So would one of the options be then for that site to be owned by the Alberni Valley Fire Departments or the regional district? Thanks.
That is something we would look at, although the site has already been deemed as not good for the rest of the region due to the location where it is. It presents issues for Port Alberni to be able to go out that distance and respond to calls. So that's one of the issues. That's something we'd have to look at.
All right, thank you, Charlie. I have Director Roth and then Director McClellan.
Thank you very much. I think that local taxpayers cannot afford to fund a fire training center. And given that Nanaimo, Comox, and Maple Ridge have live fire training available, I'd like to remain with the status quo of sending out of the region for required training. I had to look at the populations of Nanaimo, Comox, and Maple Ridge, and all of them have a substantially larger population and could better afford the training center. So I would like to move that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to not proceed with the proposed initiative case number 5.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director McClellan. And then you have a comment? Yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think anything's free. I thought $0 was kind of cute, but if we can do it, then good. But I seconded it specifically so we could debate the issue. It's been 10 minutes or more talking about it without a motion.
Okay, from now on, we're just gonna move the picks as they move forward then as they're written, just so that we don't have to have that conversation anymore. Okay, Director Beckett?
Thank you. Just for clarification, Chair, I'm not in support of this motion. I wanted to explain why. Can I say that?
Yes.
So I think when we talk about responsibility to all of our firefighters, all of our fire departments, when we talk about liability, for me, when I looked at this report and I appreciated the amount of detail that went into it, this isn't just about live fire training. And you're absolutely right. There are issues with live fire training environmentally, and there are some good facilities not too far away. However, when you look at the list of training that is required and expected by our fire departments, we need to make sure that we've got facilities that are not just training annually, but training on a regular basis. And, you know, I don't want to speak for Chief Lavoie and Bamfield, but we absolutely in our community need to have hands-on. We need to have people that can guide us and help us with our training, and something locally in the valley, I think, again, needs to be explored. We need additional detail on exactly what type of training all of our firefighters are getting, and what are the risks of not providing, that training for the firefighters. And, again, I'm not up to speed on the new legislation that's coming down or is in place now, but I implore you to reconsider this, and at least let's have some dialogue about consolidating and providing an adequate training center that all of our fire departments can use, including the city of Port Alberni. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beckett. Any further comments? Dr. Steer?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I haven't entered into this because the district of right now is going through the process of a training center that's being brought forward by Volunteer Fire Department Society. And so I just had a question in terms of, I heard early and I read in the report, and I just want to make sure I understand. It would only be those fire departments or service areas that would like to participate that would be paying into that potential service after we have this discussion and the board makes a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Charlie, can you confirm that?
Yeah, I would think that the participants would be picked, and if someone wanted to opt out, there'd be no reason for them to have to be included.
Thank you for that. Okay, any further comments? So the motion is to not do this. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion defeated. Okay, what is the will of the board? Dr. Beckett?
Thank you. I would like to make the motion that we consider this, and sorry, I'm just trying to read it now. I'm prepared to move this forward for 2025.
Okay, the motion states that the Committee of the Whole directs staff to include proposed initiative case 5, proposed service fire training center in the 2025 to 2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you for that help.
Seconded by Director Steer. Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, item 6, the wood stove exchange program, ACRD led. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so briefly, the wood stove exchange program has been run in cooperation with the Air Quality Council for a number of years by the ACRD. The Air Quality Council is no longer wanting to participate in the wood stove exchange program. There is the opportunity for the ACRD to continue operating this program, and it would be some increase in staff time, which would be funded 100% by the grant we get. So I will leave it at that. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Dr. McClellan?
Yes, I'll move that we include this into the recommendations to add it. And I think I'll make the motion will be to include it with increased advertising. And if I get a seconder, I'll explain that.
Thank you. Dr. Roth, second? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, right now, a lot of people in town don't even know that this exists. And I'm very pleased to see, I didn't know until right now that the regional district is going to be running it now. And we have all kinds of ways we advertise what bin you pick up and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do and all these things that some of us even pay attention to. And, advertising at the Bulldog games and things, get it out there that these stoves are there. I think that's an excellent plan. Unfortunately, I don't think my chimney would take one, or I would be out after one. Hope my wife wasn't listening to that.
There. Any further comments? Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Sorry, just point of order. Who seconded it?
Oh, Director Roth. Yeah. All those in favor, sorry. All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, so that brings us to item 7, which is Mike again. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So this is regarding agricultural updates to current zoning bylaw 15. So I just would note at the October Electoral Area Directors Committee meeting, the committee requested that this work be considered as part of the budget process and that we bring back sort of what that work would entail. And so briefly, I'll highlight that to complete this work, approximately 635 hours of staff time is required to meet the legislative requirements, ACRD bylaw and policy requirements, and to mitigate the risks involved in amending zoning bylaw 15, which is 53 years old. This involves reviewing the current zoning bylaw, drafting the bylaw changes, and reviewing with the Ag Development Committee, the Agricultural Advisory Committee, 6 planning committees, consulting with First Nations and agencies, and we would specifically have to have some in-depth consultation with the Agricultural Land Commission and the Ministry of Agriculture. And I would note that this estimate, sort of highlights that the work plan would go smoothly with no changes made or no request to bring it back. So I will leave it at that and answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Director Sparrow, and then Director McClement, then Director Roth.
Thank you for that. So the tax request for this is $5,000 for 600 hours. Is that something doesn't quite add up?
So that would be sort of the advertising, et cetera. We still need to figure out how to do the 600 plus hours of staff time. So that currently would either involve making some changes to the current work plan and stopping certain things, or bringing on some temporary help with that.
So 600 hours of staff time equates to how much cash?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I did just want to point out that like we did not quantify what the value of the staff hours are. They're not additional staff hours. It's like us making room for these initiatives in the work plan. So that doesn't mean we're getting an additional whatever that would be, like a 0.3 position. So we have not quantified that aspect of it. I am happy to do so, but we would have to figure out exactly who's working on it in order to figure out that, as everyone's at different rates. So
For reference, a billable year is between 2,100 and 2,500 hours. Daniel, go ahead.
Just expanding on that, if we weren't adding staff, the trade-off is the OCPs. You can't do this and the OCPs. We don't have the capacity, we don't have the staff. So, realistically, if we're going forward with this bylaw amendment, we're further delaying the OCPs, which is one of those ebbs and flows. If you recall, when we at the beginning of this term, we opted not to adopt the rezoning bylaw, which had all of the requested agricultural changes in them. And so we paused in favor of doing the OCP. We've since heard from agricultural producers that they really wanted those changes. Unfortunately, we did not proceed with them. We advanced with the OCP. What we need to do now is stop with the OCP, demobilize and remobilize in favor of this, which is so even though the 635 hours identified, it's the time lost that needs to be accounted. And right now we're over a year into the OCPs. That would be stale dated and lost in favor of this. So, I mean, we're putting it forward, but realistically, I would endorse not proceeding with this year.
Director McClement, and then Director Roth, and then Director Cote.
I was going to make a motion that we add this to the recommend to the Regional District Board to add this to the budget.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Are you seconding, Director Roth, or do you have a comment? You're seconding? Okay.
And the reason being that I think our farmers need all the support they can get. It seems like they want this. So let's give it a run and see what happens.
Thank you. Director Roth?
Thank you. I'd also like to note that all of the electoral area directors have already said yes to this, but we need this to happen in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Cote?
Thank you. I would say that I haven't given approval, so that's misinformation. I am not in favor of this. I am in favor of, we had everything in place. It took 4 years to get the zoning bylaw in place. and it was pulled back. So to interrupt the OCPs now that are have begun in Long Beach and Sprout Lake, to delay that again is to be putting work, that valuable work by staff that is being implemented on hold. And once again, we would lose what we've gained. So I am definitely not in favor of this. I wish that it had passed 2 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Dr. Roth, go ahead.
Can I please get a recorded vote? Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is to do this. Okay, any further comments? Is seeing none, all those in favor? I have Director Roth and Director McClellan. Okay, all opposed? Okay, I'll do inside first. Director Steer, Director Patella. Come on, guys, vote. You can't vote no. Director Coots, Director Cote, Director Solda, and Director Jack. Okay, and online we have Director Johnson, Director Mr. Angelo, Director Beckett, Director McEwen, Director Siga. And I didn't catch your vote, sorry. Did you vote? Okay, Director Sparrow votes no, so motion defeated. Okay, so with that in mind, what is the will of the board? Yeah, I guess doing nothing is not good.
Acceptance, and that was defeated.
And that was defeated.
Don't need to vote again.
Sorry, yeah, no, I thought it was a vote. No, yeah, it's the opposite of what I'm thinking. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, so the next item is item 8, rural planning in regards to outdoor burning smoke control regulation. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you. The ACRD board adopted the outdoor burning bylaw in 2021 with the intent to help improve air quality by managing how and when backyard burning and outdoor fires can occur throughout the region. The bylaw includes an outdoor burning closure from November 15th to March 1st of each year, when the atmospheric conversions are most likely to occur in the Alberni Valley. This does not align with the provincial regulations that allows for burning during the winter months when the venting index is good. And that is still common when the winter days allow for safe burning while mitigating the impact on air quality. So the intent with this project would be to consider updates to the bylaw that would better align with the provincial regulations and allow the ACRD's enforcement process to be more effective and focused on the poor venting days when burning should not occur. The project would require the allocation of existing staff resources to prepare options for the board to consider with the bylaw updates and the improved enforcement procedures, as well as engagement with the province, the fire departments, and the Air Quality Council. Thanks.
Thank you. So it's an amendment. It's not a regulation. Okay. I have Director Patella, and then anybody else? No? Okay, Director McClellan, go ahead.
Just
Director
make the motion as written. Oh, do you want me to read it?
Yeah, it would be helpful.
The committee of the whole directs staff to include proposed initiative case 08 outdoor burning smoke control regulation in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Solda. Thank you. And then comment, Director Roth, please go ahead, and then Director Sparrow.
I was just going to make the same motion. Thank you.
Director Sparrow?
Thank you. Would this changing of this bylaw have any impact on the OCPs and the other stuff, or just?
Through the chair, no, the bylaw enforcement staff and the planning staff that would be leading this would be separate from the OCP and the zoning work.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, item 9, proposed service for the Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility referendum for October 2026. Terry, go ahead.
Thank you. So the Alberni Valley Aquatic Center, we did get the feasibility study done in spring of 2024, and we've been having an ongoing governance discussion. We're still kind of hung up on the cost apportionment part, so we still have further conversation to be done on that. In the meantime, at the last Alberni Valley and Banfield meeting, there was a request to get a tour of the Echo Aquatic facility and some discussion regarding whether we want to do a feasibility study on the renovation of that building. So I just wanted to bring this forward and see what the direction was from the board as to where we want to go this year. Staff recommendation is for us to continue those discussions about apportionment and continue with that feasibility study that was done in 2024 of the new facility. And hopefully we can finish up those governance discussions. Because of the timing of the next local government election in October 2026, staff are actually just recommending that we then gear up to do a referendum question at that time. If we're ready and if the board's wanting to proceed, obviously there's a lot of ifs in there, but the money that we would need to spend to do that, say in spring 2026, just doesn't really seem justifiable when we could put it in conjunction and save a lot of money with that fall election cycle. So just looking for the director's feedback and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Comments? Dr. Roth, please go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to look at the alternative option of renovating the existing pool. I think that if it, the way that it is now and the way it's been presented, I think that Beaver Creek very likely would turn it down. So I really would like to look at the option. Thank you.
It's not a. Okay. Director Petrola, please go ahead.
I'd like to make the motion as written. I move that the committee of the whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 09 Alberni Valley Aquatics Facility referendum, October 2026 in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Seconded by Director Coots. Any further comments? Director Cote?
Thank you. It sounds like staff are saying that we're not ready for a referendum. I think that there's things that we should be doing. And it looks like the alternative option would be for $75,000 to hire a consultant to complete the work on renovation of the existing facility. And not for the referendum. And I don't think we're ready for a referendum at this point. That's too weird.
Page 40.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Director McClellan, go ahead.
Is the motion on the floor to do the alternative recommendation?
No. It's just the one as written for now.
Okay, so that is the motion. The motion has been made to do the
Yes,
one written.
Director
Okay.
Patella and Director
Okay,
Coots.
then I have a bit of a problem with it, as much as I know we need a new swimming area and so on, and have for a long time. But with the referendum in 2026, which makes sense to have it then for cost and other things, maybe we should look at the alternative one and just see what it would take to fix it up. Although I got my doubts that it's possible, but that's just me. I'm not an expert at that at all.
Yeah, sorry. I had assumed that we could do both and it would be helpful to have a decision on this item first, and then we'd know that the next item would be for looking at that renovation. With that being said, we can still do that. Any further comments? Oh, Daniel, go ahead.
I think it's fair to say that these two are not mutually exclusive. We can gear up for 2026 referendum. The alternative is simply to add 75,000 to this year to do the renovation assessment, and that would be added to the discussion. With, of course, we'd be aiming to try and land everything so it's a referendum during the election, the established election date in 2026. So it's a revised time plan, but I don't think these need to be mutually exclusive resolutions.
Any further comments? Director Roth, go ahead, and then Director Sparrow.
So does that mean that the idea of renovating the existing pool could still be there then with this, given this motion?
Yes.
Okay, because I think, like, I honestly, just being honest here, think the way it is now, without that alternative, it would be turned down. Thank you.
Just to clarify, Director Roth, if this motion moves forward or doesn't, you can still put forward a motion to add the 75,000 to the budget to explore the renovation.
Okay,
So what I would recommend is whatever the board opts to vote on this. So if they would like to see a referendum timed with the next election, 2026, then vote yes. If you don't like that timing, then vote no. And then after that vote is done, then you can put forward a resolution to add the 75,000 to the 2025 budget to hire a consultant to look at the feasibility of renovating. That would be a separate motion after this one.
I'll do that. Thanks.
We'll go right back to you then after this. Okay, any further comments? Dr. Sparrow, go ahead.
So thank you. We're basically saying that we're going to hold a referendum in 2026, or maybe not, depending on how other things move along, right? If we pivot to keeping the existing pool with the city's blessing, then we can do that. This basically just says, if worse comes to worse, this is a set date, we're gonna have a referendum if we can get our stuff together in time. That's all I'm saying. I'm correct. Thank you.
Yeah, and the thing is, it would be cost saving, so you don't have to have a referendum in an off year. Yeah, Director Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. So it looks like it would be $15,000 this year for consulting.
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair. That is, I think we might need some support with that apportionment discussion. I think we're kind of at a point where staff, I think we'll take one more kind of try at it, but I feel like we need some expertise to come in and try to get us over the finish line. So that would be for the governance end of the bylaw. Whether we renovate the existing facility or do a new facility, I do think the conversation is the same, and that the city is looking for it to become a sub-regional service and not a municipally owned service. So that part kind of stays the same no matter what option. So we do still need to finish those governance discussion. And yes, I think we might need to bring in some consultant help. I can't remember the name of the gentleman that actually kicked off this conversation, but we might circle him back in to kind of give us a hand.
Thank you. Dr. Roth, do you still have your hand up or a comment? No? Okay, thank you. All right, with the motion as it is, all those in favor of the motion? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. And Dr. Roth, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to make the motion to add a PIC of $75,000 to the 2025 budget for a feasibility study of renovating the existing pool.
Okay, we'll refer to it as 9A.
Okay.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Beckett. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 10, Alberta Valley Emergency Planning for the Starlink Network Development. Karen, go ahead.
Good. I was going to say good afternoon, but it's still good morning. We developed a PIC for Starlink because in previous board meetings and recently within the Emergency Executive Committee meeting, that has been requested that staff explore Starlink as a means to enhance emergency preparedness and improve communication capabilities during a disaster. So Starlink is a satellite-based internet service that will provide high-speed internet access to remote areas with limited or no connectivity. This proposal seeks to allocate funding to support the purchase of equipment and support annual operating costs that would help the emergency management in the ACRD and Fire Services Department. As you know, the ACRD encompasses a vast area where there's times where there's no internet services, and this can pose a challenge to delaying information, disrupting response coordination, impeding timely alerts, and updating the public. The lack of information also jeopardizes our responder safety and has the potential to create confusion for responders and public alike. The purchase of this equipment is relatively inexpensive, but it does have an annual ongoing operational fee. So if interested, each unit will cost approximately around $3,000, just under, but the operating fees also are about $2,700 annually for each unit. So in this proposal, we've identified a number of locations where we foresee that Starlink would be beneficial and provided a few options to consider on this matter. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I have Director Solda, Director Sparrow, Director Siga.
So I have a quick question regarding the Starlink. Now, at the emergency meeting, we also talked about fire trucks having it. So would this be in addition, or is the fire trucks involved? And then I'll have to.
Through the chair, this would be including of the fire trucks. The Starlink has the potential to be portable, so it could be at the fire hall or it could be taken out on the trucks as well.
So where I'm going with this city of Port Alberni would be included in this, I'm assuming, with our fire truck. And if it's not, we have a letter going to come back to the regional district that we referred the whole thing back to the emergency programming, that we are involved in that. So I'm just kind of curious if we were going to get Starlink on our fire trucks or be involved in this.
The pick before you does not include the City of Port Alberni Fire Department. It includes one for the EOC here in the Alberni Valley, one for ESS so we can have it at a reception center, Beaver Creek, Sprout Lake, and Banfield Fire Department.
I would like to have the Alberni Valley included in this with our fire department in that, because we do go to the Banfield. We do not have communication with any of our emergency services because of, as we know, the same reasons as all the other fire trucks if they're doing mutual aid. So I think Port Alberni should be included in that, and I would support that. Thank you. I don't know if you want me to make the motion that's record in this and add Port Alberni, or
I'll hear from Terry first and then we'll, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So the way we have set this up to be budgeted is not necessarily through the AV emergency planning budget. Like the fire departments themselves will be funding theirs. Karen and her Alberni Valley Emergency Planning Service budget would fund the EOC and the ESS, but the other departments will be funding their own Starlink services for it. It will obviously create a network, but we weren't planning on funding it through the AVEP budget because then Banfield would not receive one. So it would definitely be great if the city got it, but would have to go through the City of Port Alberni Fire Department budget because I don't have a taxpayer group for that.
Thank you. Director Sparrow and then Director Siga.
Thank you for that. I'm in conjunction with Director Solda said regarding, we thought one of the first places we put it would be the city rescue truck because it goes out to Banfield and through the Grove and out to Tofino, Euclid area, which is the hardest areas we have for reception. So that would be the best test case. We can put it out throughout the valley. The EOC doesn't activate as often as the rescue truck that the city does. It does like Beaver Creek or Sprout Lake. Banfield may be different if they do rescue because they have areas that don't have reception out there. But I was kind of surprised when I didn't see the City of Port Alberni's fire truck on here because that would be the best example to use it. And I don't know how to include it in there, but I don't they put money into the operations center? But I don't know. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the way that this works is the general operation of fire services is different than emergency planning. So they're different services and therefore they're treated differently. This is when there's a disaster and an EOC is opened. That's when this would be activated. It's for coverage for those very foundational things. Coverage for the fire service for kind of day-to-day operations should be treated somewhat differently. I think if you want to expand it, then I wouldn't go through emergency planning, but rather I would go through a separate service that's already established and add it to the budget. With that, I did put Director Solda back on. So next up is Director Siga.
Thank you very much. I was just wondering if it would be prudent to put one on the West Coast, perhaps at the airport. So there is direct access from the West Coast.
Karen, go ahead.
Thank you. So part of the reason we were selecting the EOC and the ESS is we think there's potential that we could fit it into our grants because they've been identified as part of the UBCM grants that we have coming up. So we do think we could purchase it now, keeping in mind that the operational costs won't be associated with that. As far as the Long Beach Airport is concerned, we don't have emergency planning services on into Tofino or Ucluelet. Those are not in our area. So I'm not sure as far as emergency planning is concerned that would make sense, because the airport hasn't also been identified as an ESS or EOC site either. So that wouldn't be my first choice, but it's open to conversation.
Thank you. I have Director Ross and then Director Beckett.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 10, Starlink network development in the 2025-29 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Did you have a comment or are you just moving?
No, I agree with it. I think that it'd be a good start, and maybe we can grow from there later, but it'd be great to test it out just the way that Karen's presented it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Beckett and then Director Solda and then Director Patella.
Thank you, Chair Jack. Further to Director Sparrow's comments, and I appreciate your comments, Chair Jack, that Starlink on the fire trucks may be a separate budget item, not to be confused with the good work the staff's doing with emergency planning. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that if Port Alberni's rescue truck, which is going out to do extrication on the highways, whether it's Banfield or whether it's going west to Ucluelet area, communications is critical. And so I guess the question through the chair to Charlie is, I assume that UHF radios that you have on board, there's no other means of communicating with the mutual aid partners or with Port Alberni Dispatch once they get out of range. And if that's the case, then we need to address this lack of communications if that's the case. So if I can, through the chair, let Charlie answer that for me.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yes, there are several black areas both towards Banfield and towards the Tofino Highway where there is no communication, cell or radio service available. So Starlink would potentially alleviate that issue.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, I'm looking for some advice, some guidance from yourself or the board. And I'm in favor of this pick going forward, but I do not want to lose sight of the fact that we need to be able to communicate to our mutual aid and other first responders at what could be a horrific situation that they're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Beckett. I think my suggestion would be to do a motion after this to do an exploration of Starlink linkages for other services, including the Alberni Valley Fire Department, as well as perhaps other ones. Honestly speaking, when it comes to safety on the road, I think there's a component, at least on the Banfield Road, for our industry partners to help pay for something like that, because they're responsible for safety as well. But we'd have to explore that, right? So that conversation is somewhat different. I don't think a safety coverage conversation should exclude that because it would save the taxpayers money as well. With that in mind, we have Director Solda next, and then Director Patella, McClellan, and Cote.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head. I know our fire department has had frustration trying to make communication when they have called out to Banfield or wherever they cannot, and they can't communicate with other emergency services. And the city of Port Alberni, well, we know policing and fire, our fire department's a big budget item, like takes quite a bit of our budget. And we're looking at cost recovery on a lot of issues regarding the fire department. So when it comes to Starlink, I totally agree that safety has to be first. And when we talked about it at the emergency meetings and that we've talked about Starlinks being attached, I believe the Beaufort area director, he actually mentioned it being on, brought up the Starlink and also talked about it being on fire trucks. And so we can communicate back and forth to one another if there's needs to have mutual aid out. If the Port Alberni Fire Department goes out there, hey, we need mutual aid, somebody's got to come and join us. And how do we communicate that? There's also areas in Cathedral Grove in that area that has been dead zones too. So there's a lot. And I think you have to also look at it. If there's an emergency in the Alberni Valley, the power goes out. There's no power in the valley. How do we communicate, right? I mean, that means the internet's down. So, and phone services are, cell phones are down. So we're going to be in a lot of trouble if we don't have some other form of communication. And I know there's the CBC, the radio that has communication, but that's not the same thing. So I'm just putting that out there as an argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Solda, Director Patella, and then Director McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just support the motion. I note that the motion, when read, didn't include the entirety of the motion as written. It did not include the for emergency purposes part. So I'm wondering if that was intentional to open the door for the greater discussion. In my opinion, the greater discussion is not only required, but is also enabled by the motion and the pick the way it's written, because it includes fire services. Fire services in the valley are incorporate automatic mutual aids. So it's entirely possible that whatever scenario is devised, the Port Alberni Fire Department will be equally included and a necessary link in the chain. So for those reasons, I think that the motion and the pick both can include discussion or research into finding a way to make the Starlink network encompassing all of the partners in the program. And beyond that, I would suggest that without having some consideration, I don't know what the end result's going to be, without having some consideration of including the Port Alberni Fire Department in this discussion, you're basically going to lose that link in the chain, because I would be very concerned about the designated services the city provides and directs the city's fire department to undertake, to put them into a risky situation when other fire departments are available that aren't in a risky situation to respond. So suggesting that if Port Alberni Fire Department doesn't have a Starlink network, but another fire department does have a Starlink network, the more appropriate responder to any emergency is the one with the Starlink network. So quite possibly part of these considerations need to be not the theory of who's paying and the artificial boundaries of influence that we have, but just the factual situation of when somebody needs help, who's going to get there, who's the best person to do it, and make sure that amongst all of the players, there's a plan for that help to be delivered.
Thank you for that. I was assuming that the motion was just in reference to the motion as it was written. So my preference would be to have a clarifying extra motion after this, just to make sure we cover off what both Director Solda and others have already stated. So we'll do that right after. So if either of you can think on what the language may be for that, that would be helpful. Next up is Director McClellan and then Director Cote.
I'd like to call the previous question.
We'll get to that after Director Ross and Cote have spoken. Thank you.
So you're not going to call the question?
No, because you'd have to call a vote to do that. And that's just my preference. We have Director Cote and Ross speak, and then we'll go right to it. Okay, Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I absolutely support this. I participated in a BC Hydro emergency exercise about a month or so ago. where Starlink was identified. I'd like for our emergency planning to actually recommend to all our agencies that we work with that Starlink is our preferred mode of communication going forward, and that I support on Sprout Lake budget for my fire department to have Starlink provided for in this year's budget. So as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Roth, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to request that Terry speak to the ACRD providing funding outside of a ACRD service area again, because I think some people might be missing that information, because I don't think we can do that. Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay, sorry, Terry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, we can't provide it outside of a service area. I am kind of thinking, like, in my mind, this was a fire thing, and so it would have to be through the fire service. I would have to read over what the stipulations of the establishing bylaw for emergency planning is. Maybe we run it through AV emergency planning with the exception of Bamfield. And then we could do it to all the service areas. That means that they're all paying for like you're paying for everyone in that Alberni Valley area is contributing based on your land and improvement percentages to those costs that are those annual costs. But that might be a way, and so we definitely can look into that. Nothing's jumping out at me as being offside. I think I was just more like it was a fire operation, so it'd be running through the fire budgets. But we could run it through AVEP, I think.
Okay, so that can inform a following motion. So now we'll go to the original motion as stated. So it's that the committee of the whole directs staff to include proposed initiative case 10, Starlink network development for emergency purposes in 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Now, I would suggest that we have a wide enough motion to include investigation into all of the concerns that we've already discussed. I don't know what that motion looks like specifically. However, I think it would be something to the effect of the committee of the whole direct staff to create I think the issue itself is coverage, is Starlink coverage for emergency services in addition to planning and management. So I think that could be something that we do. But Director Patello, what do you think?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd make a motion that the committee of the whole direct staff to explore funding opportunities pursuant to proposed initiative case 10, expanding the case to include all participants in emergency operations center activities with regards to expanding the Starlink network development.
Can you include the term emergency services in there somewhere?
Yeah, emergency operations center and emergency and any other related emergency services within the regional district.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Dr. Solda, thank you. Any further comments?
I'm sorry, that should be in the 2025-2029 draft.
Yeah, in this year. Yeah.
This year to finish.
Thank you for the clarification. Seeing no further comments, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. So let's include that motion right after. Jim? Okay. Okay. 11 is Long Beach Airport approach lighting design for runway 11/29. Mark, are you online? Please go ahead. Or Jenny, please go ahead, Jenny.
Yes, I believe Mark is probably multitasking, and so I can jump in and speak to that one. So this pick is for the developing new approach lighting system. So we have recently received a reduced instrument approach procedure, which is excellent. That is going to reduce us from a 2-kilometer ceiling down to a 1-kilometer ceiling. We have to also make sure that we're clearing the trees within that area that we're working on. But the other aspect of that is the lighting. So this is an excellent improvement, and it will ensure that we will have less planes being turned around, because sometimes they go in and because they can't see and they don't have lighting or it's really foggy, they won't be able to land. So with the lower approach limit, with improved lighting, we will be able to improve that. That helps with medevac and commercial flights, and is a huge benefit for the community. In 2025, we will be beginning the preparation for this project with the capital to begin in 2026. So this section of the work, although isn't that expensive, it will build into a multi-million-dollar project, or I think it's about $1.5 million. Happy to answer any questions and can poke Mark if we get too technical.
Thank you. I have Director Steer and then Director Siga. And Director Patella, could you turn your microphone off?
Right, I'd like to make the motion that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 11 Long Beach Airport approach lighting design for runway 1129 in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director McEwen. And next comment is Director Siga and then Director McClellan.
Thank you very much. I was just wanting some clarification on how the funding is to be delegated.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, so for the 2025, the $40,000 will be paid for out of our reserve funds. For the capital project, we'll be applying for BCAP funding. I don't foresee us moving forward with the project without some kind of grant funding. So BCAP is typically a 65% funding portion. That helps.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Director McClellan.
Yeah, I had the same question. And is this just the West Coast part of the budget that pays for this?
Yeah, I believe it's just the participants for Long Beach Airport.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 12, proposed West Coast emergency coordination.
Thank you. Okay, so this project has been a part of the financial plan since 2018, but it remains as a proposed service. There's been discussions since 2006 regarding developing a West Coast focused emergency coordination service to coordinate emergency related projects and initiatives. In 2018, the West Coast Committee supported a draft budget for the West Coast Emergency Coordination Service, with funds also being collected from Tofino, Ucluelet, Tokwak, and Long Beach electoral area. To date, none of these funds have been spent. The recent modernization of the emergency legislation requires collaboration between local governments and First Nations. ACRD has been currently developing a West Coast emergency cultural awareness and safety plan with other local governments and First Nations. This work and many other projects, including partnering on grant applications and training exercises, have been occurring within the confines of our existing emergency services. Staff between all organizations have been developing strong supportive relationships over the last few years. So should the board wish to proceed with developing this service, this would be done by way of service establishment bylaw. However, should the board not wish to create the service, the budget allocation should be removed and funding returned to Tofino, Ucluelet, and Tokwak. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further comments? Director Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that the Committee of the Whole direct staff to not include proposed initiative case 12, West Coast Emergency Coordination Service establishment in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. Is that seconding or a comment? Okay, second. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of not including? Okay, all opposed? 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, motion carried, but nobody voted. Let's try it again. All those in favor of not including? All opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you.
I could ask you for a recorded vote for all of them.
Okay. So with that, that brings us to item 13, West Coast Multiplex, support for West Coast Multiplex Society. Daniel, please go ahead.
Okay, the West Coast Committee passed a motion to request to have the ACRD recommence taxation under the service bylaw to fund a staff or contracted position to support the efforts of the society in 2025. The objective of the expressed objectives of the West Coast Multiplex Society was to complete design work for the West Coast Multiplex, to complete the planning work required to get cost estimates for site prep and site servicing. They were seeking support for the coordination of government and agency collaboration in the initiative. And the society also wanted support as they advance with public and private sector funding campaigns for raising the funds required to build the West Coast Multiplex. So if we were to advance, then what they're looking for is a consistent person to work with the ACRD. And of course, that is something that would be above and beyond what we're currently doing. The risk that we would want to point out on this, or at least two factors. The financial impacts, I'll start with that, is we were talking about approximately $50,000 in order to provide the required support that we understand them to be asking for. And also 20 hours of community services, primarily airport staff around lease locations, about 15 hours of the CAO's time, and 15 hours of grant coordination review. Beyond that, the risk associated with this is, is to identify the existing risks around this project. So what we have seen historically is a non-united front on the West Coast. So we see support for the society, but when we get to the actual grant application, what we see is each community, nations, and local government making their own individual grant applications, as well as the society. And the result has been that the grant funders come back and say, pick one, not all. And so I think if we were to proceed with this and make the investment, do the taxation, step one would be to have an important discussion with Ucluelet, Tofino, Tloquet, Toquat, Utlulusat, and make sure that if we're proceeding with a grant application for the multiplex, that we're all agreeing that that is the priority application. Otherwise, we risk dedicating ACRD time, tax collected towards something that will be defeated when we get to grant application.
Okay, thank you. Director Steer and then Director Roth.
Yeah, at this time, and I hear exactly what Daniel's saying. One of the there is a grant application in at this point in time, and there's an anticipation talking with the director of the Multiplex Society that they're hoping to have that grant application now with the federal government in the situation it is in right now. That may be delayed, but there was hoping to have that answer towards that grant application in the spring of this year. That would dictate a lot of the momentum going forward in the conversations with the Multiplex Society. One of the administrative supports would be in anticipation of a positive outcome for that particular grant application. I do hear some of the issues that have been historical in terms of moving forward with separate grant applications for the same grant applications from the municipalities as with the multiplex for this particular recreational type facility. And so I mean, I'm supportive of a requisition. Unfortunately, the timing is just really bad until we had clarification on that grant application. It is problematic. At the same time, I'm wondering, and I don't have that, and I was trying to figure out the language on this particular pick. I do want to be supportive because I do think that they do need that administrative support. It is volunteer run, and there has been historical support for the service that was created. There is some questions about I quote, a united front in terms of moving those priorities. I think that those goalposts are changing and those conversations are going to be going up. I know specifically with the District of Tofino, I can't speak for Euclid or Area C in terms of those conversations, but I would be happy to support. I just don't know the amount of money and the timing. And so I don't know if it would be appropriate to amend in terms of the budget allocation for 2025, if it can be in the budget for a 2026 time frame. And I really would have loved to have contacted the executive director to have a much fuller conversation, but I don't think there would be an opposition to having it included in a 2026 budget year. Why don't I move that? Is that, do you have enough there, Heather? Okay, so let me get back to the for the 2026 budget year. Yeah. So the committee of the whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 13, support the West Coast Multiplex Society in the 2026 draft ACRD financial plan.
Do we have a seconder? Director Roth, are you seconding?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're next up for comment, if you have comment.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, just on the motion, if he meant, if he was talking about to the 2026 proposed initiative case discussion, is that what you meant, or did you mean the budget? And also separately, why can't the West Coast Multiplex Society apply to the ACRD for a grant and aid rather than this process?
Terry, do you want to take that? Or Daniel?
Sure, I can take it. Yeah, they technically, I guess, could. I think in this case, we do actually have a service. The service is just a little bit of an odd one in that the service is to operate a facility that is to be built by the society that's not yet built. But then we also recognize that in order for us to accept a facility that meets our standards that we are then going to have to operate, there's a lot of back and forth that needs to be. So they are a not-for-profit, so we could do it in that manner. But because we already have this service governance model set up, I think it would make most sense to do it through that approach. And then it's clear to the taxpayers what service we're still trying to work on for them.
Thank you. Any further comments? Dr. McEwen or Dr. Siga? Or Dr. Johnson? Okay, Dr. McEwen and then back to Dr. Roth.
Well, thank you. I would like to see this PIC included in the 2025 to 2029 draft ACRD financial plan, because we are just at the beginning process of these PICs, and I think as we get further into the budget, we may get some a better indication of whether they are successful with that grant application. That just would be my preference.
Okay, Dr. McEwen. Dr. Roth, did you put your hand down? Yeah, okay. Any further comments? Okay, so seeing none, this is a motion to move it to 2026. Okay, Dr. Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just listening to my to Director McEwen. I think there is some sense in that, in the sense, and maybe I just need clarification if we will have further discussion through the budget process, and would there be an opportunity further into the budget process to amend this particular piece? Okay.
Yes, there would be.
So thank you, and thank you, Marilyn, Director McEwen, for that. Would it be appropriate, Chair Jack, could I withdraw then the previous motion, or do we have to vote that one down and then I can propose?
I think it's just simpler to defeat the motion. Okay. So I'll just go straight to that. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Okay, motion defeated. Director Steer?
Great, thank you. That the Committee of the Whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 13, support for the West Coast Multiplex Society in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Seconded by Director McEwen and everyone on the West Coast. Okay, any further comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so what I'd like to do right now, before we get to item 14, is to call a maybe 5 to 10 minute recess. The lunch has been delivered here, so let's grab lunch and then continue on. So let's come back at 20 after 10. And then we'll continue this meeting, unless nobody wants to, but we'll consider that once we come back at 20 after. Yeah, thank you for that. Hi, folks. We'll start in about 2 minutes.
Completely separated.
All right, let's pick it back up pretty quickly here. So the next item we have is item 14, the Bamfield Community Park. It's a Grappler Inlet dock upgrades. Michael, I'm wondering if you could take us through it.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm Michael McGregor, Lands and Resources Coordinator with the ACRD. And this pick here is specifically for the Grappler Inlet Wharf and the section that's for the public, operated by the Bamfield Park Service. And in short, it's just ensuring that there's infrastructure in place that meets Transport Canada standards and regulations. Happy to answer any other questions you may have on this.
Thank you. I just realized Director Beckett is not back yet. So what I will do is ask a question. Oh, there we go. Hi, Director Beckett. Did you have any comments?
Just stand by 1 second, please.
We're on the Grappler dock upgrades.
Yes, sir. I was appreciative of the report. I think it accurately reflects the needs of of the community and to address the liabilities that have been identified in the report. So I am completely supportive of that, and I would make the motion as such.
Thank you. So the motion has been moved as presented. Director Roth, are you seconding? Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in, oh, Director McClellan, go ahead.
Just a question, is this for the budget for the entire region or just Bamfield?
It notes that the service is the Bamfield Community Park, so the only participant is Bamfield.
Okay, because sometimes that used to be shared. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Next item is item 15, the Bamfield Community Emergency Planning, tsunami siren replacement. Karen, please go ahead.
Thank you. In 2023, the Bamfield Tsunami Warning System was evaluated. It was tested for usability, reliability, design, construction, and accessibility. And it identified several issues and areas of improvement. It was determined that the system is semi-functional and does not meet industry standards, and it's failed to function as intended. The evaluation highlighted that some of the shortcomings included the automatic activation, the siren volumes and the range, the clarity of the voice announcements, and the physical sturdiness of the towers and systems. So with this knowledge, it was recommended that a full replacement is needed to upgrade the system to meet industrial standards. It comes at a large expense, so the estimated budget is close to $400,000 to replace the system. So with this pick, we're asking for staff time allocation to pursue grant opportunities that would help support this upgrade. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Director Beckett, please go ahead.
Thank you. Clearly, this is desperately needed in our community, given the tsunami risk. I was taken back by the amount of cost, but I recognize that what's being proposed has a significant, there's been significant improvements to the technology that allows for a number of changes to it, also include audio, directions, et cetera, et cetera. So the question I have is, typically what type of percentage of grant would there be available to cover off on the cost of $385,000?
Terry, I just see you coming on, so I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I know that we did put this in once already, and it would have been 100% grant funded. Unfortunately, emergency planning type initiatives such as this are not all that often available for grants. So we do get lots of training opportunities and that stuff, but when it comes to these, because they're not really common across the whole province, it's not really something that we're finding fits into the box very often. So we would definitely be seeking 100% grant funding. It's not eligible for community works funding, but we do still have a bit of that growing communities fund that has a lot more flexibility. So we maybe could stack if we are not able to find something that's 100%, because we recognize the cost on the community, even at like an 80% grant would still be very high for a community of this size. So we're definitely aiming to get 100% grant funding on it.
Thanks for that. And a follow-up, Mr. Chair, if I could, Anakla is not far from Bamfield. We use the same road in and out. And I'm wondering, through Karen, did you consider, or does this system have any value or benefit to our Huu-ay-aht neighbors?
Absolutely, it does. Right now, there's 4 locations of our towers. One's at the east side Fire Hall, one's at the west side, one's at Bamfield Marine Science Center, and actually one is at the Huu-ay-aht First Nations Government Office as it stands. So I definitely think, as we've identified, regional resiliency is such an important part of emergency management. So I would definitely look to Huu-ay-aht to jointly pursue something that we could benefit both communities.
Thank you. With that information, I would like to move that motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Okay. Any further comments? What I can say is that I would like for some sort of communication about this specific item to be sent to Huayet. This is something that we should participate together in. Director Cote?
Thank you. Could we maybe pursue municipal insurance for a grant?
Yeah, I think every opportunity for grants will be explored. Yeah, it's not specific in the note, so I just assumed. Yeah. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. There it is. Okay, that brings us to the South Long Beach Fire Protection, installation of fire hydrant, or is that plural? Charlie, go ahead.
Good morning again, or good afternoon now. Yes, the South Long Beach Fire Protection is provided by UQLIT. And as part of our discussions on renewing their agreement, an issue has come up where they have had several fires in this local area where they have the hydrant is located across the highway and they've had to shut the highway down for several hours. And the chief feels it's a very unsafe process. So they've asked us to investigate installing a hydrant on the opposite side of the highway for them. And that's where this comes from.
Okay, thank you. Dr. McEwen, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to make the motion that the committee of the whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 16, South Long Beach Fire Protection installation of fire hydrant in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
You seconded by Director Siga. Any further comments?
Just that there was a very bad fire a few years ago in that area, and just as Charlie said, the road was closed for several hours because the hose had to go across the highway to get to the nearest fire hydrant, and they managed to make it work, but this would be so much easier to have another fire hydrant there.
Thank you. Director Sparrow, then Director Siga, then Director McClellan.
No, thank you. Just one quick comment. It says it's going to put in some pipe. It doesn't say how much, but it'd be interesting to see how far it goes with 200 grand with an underground drilling and that. Just not far. This is interesting. That's all.
Thank you. Director Siga.
Hi, I just want to point out that this is brought to light because of the fires that did occur down Willowbrae Road. But the same circumstance exists for Sutton Road on the other side of the inlet, where access to water is a problem. So I don't know if there's any way to expand. Like, I will definitely vote this forward, but I need that to be within the framework of recognition that this is sort of an after the fallen off the cliff kind of motion that's being put forward, whereas more of a preventative approach in ensuring water access for fire fighting capability around the entire inlet should be the focus. So I don't know if there's a way of putting that into the planning in the future, but I'll definitely vote this one forward.
Daniel, go ahead.
You do raise a very good point, and I know that Terry, Charlie, and myself have also met with our counterparts with the District of UQLIT to talk about exactly what you're bringing up. There is a larger picture here, and what we're really trying to do is simply take it in phases, really, and the biggest step is this first step. If we can get that funded to move forward, it resolves a lot of issues. And then after that, we could talk about phasing over time, where we could potentially extend, but it is a larger discussion. You're correct. We just want to start with sort of stopping the bleeding and getting that first step done.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. McClellan, please go ahead.
Yeah, just two quick questions. One, is this any harder to get grants for than the tsunami warning? And if we don't get the full grant, is this once again West Coast or Euclid or somebody getting the whole thing on their budget or what?
Second question first, Terry?
Yeah, it'll be the South Long Beach Fire Protection Service area that will pay for it if we do not find grant funding. There are a few grant opportunities, more so for fire. And again, it would qualify for the Growing Communities Fund that we have. So once we get a more solid cost estimate, we will look at our different approaches, but hoping not to put that solely on the taxpayer.
Thank you. Okay, further comment? You seeing none? All of those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next up is for Alex, animal control for Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, and Cherry Creek. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. The ACRD has dangerous dog bylaws in place for 3 electoral areas in Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, and Cherry Creek, as you've heard. These electoral areas services are established individually, and each region has a limited budget, which makes it challenging to secure a professional contractor that can provide a consistent animal control service where needed. The project would investigate options for coordinating the resources available in the 3 service areas to secure a reputable contractor such as the BC SPCA that has the facilities, the training, the resources, and the experience available to provide that effective service for us. This would be paired with clear guidelines for the ACRD staff to direct more efficient and consistent enforcement along with that. The risk in maintaining the 3 service areas with limited budgets would be the restricted ability to respond to issues as needed, and the potential risk to the organization if the ACRD cannot effectively provide animal control where our bylaws say that we do. The project would require the allocation of existing staff resources to research options and costs of contract services for the board's consideration. And one of those options may include the issuance of bylaw notices or fines for contraventions of the bylaws to mitigate the overall cost of the service and to promote compliance. Happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? Director Solda and then Director Cote.
Just a quick comment. The city of Port Alberni last night at a meeting are going to now explore options for a different delivery model instead of the SPCA, just so you are aware of that. It's just we're just exploring it because the cost is so out there. And I just thought this board should know.
Thank you for that. Further comments? Dr. Cote, go ahead.
Thank you. So in the past, we've looked at animal control, dangerous dog bylaw. And it was cost prohibitive to go with the SPCA. They wanted another vehicle. So I'm not in favor of going with the SPCA if it's going to be the same request as was last time we looked at this. So wanting to know if there's any other options than if our dangerous dog bylaw provider for that service is no longer available. Is there any other that's out there that is similar? Thanks.
So this is the investigation of a region-wide service, so there would be contemplation of not just BCSVA for sure. I just know because Huey went through a process and we looked at other options, so there are other options out there. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Roth, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm thinking that we should put this off or move it ahead to next year because there's a lot of things on our plate. So I would like to move that the committee of the whole direct staff to delay consideration of proposed initiative case 17 to the 2026 proposed initiative case discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Director McClellan, thank you. Comments? Mike, and then Director Cote, and then Director Sparrow.
Just as the board's considering this, I do want to highlight, like right now, the structure is set up that it's 3 separate services, and that in 2024 we ran out of money in Beaver Creek, so we didn't have capacity to respond to complaints. So if there's something serious, there's some liability things to consider as we work through this, and I certainly understand the costs and stuff, but as the board considers this, it's something you need to be aware of, and there's the risk and liability components to this as well.
Thank you for that. Okay, Director Cote and then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. So if we don't approve this pick, then will we continue to have coverage as we stand now?
So the status quo would be remaining with the 3 individual service areas. We do have a contractor that we've used on an as needed basis that is a private contractor. The costs have escalated, and you know that's the main reason why we've reached the limit in one of those service areas. So the intent would be to look at ways of being more flexible and combining the resources that we have available to us to allow us to respond to complaints as needed.
So with the complaints, because it's divided up and each separate has their own service, putting that service together, would we be pooling our resources then? And Sprout Lake would be paying for complaints that are coming from other areas?
So that can be determined by the bylaw itself. So you can have a system of making sure that doesn't happen when you develop the rules of the game.
So Sprout Lake doesn't really have a lot of cows. There's maybe 3 farms that I can think of in the whole area of Sprout Lake. So not really looking at herd control. So I would want to make sure that the new service is very specific as to what it covers. Thanks.
Yeah, and that can be an option in the discussions as well. Yeah. Okay, any further comments? Director Sparrow, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of the motion that's presented because it'll leave a 1-year gap pretty well right now to leave it off for a year. So we need to get on with this thing and see what we can do. I know as far as dangerous dogs go, we've had a few at Cherry Creek over the years. One of what we had years ago was ones in the schoolyard, and then we had no bylaw, so they couldn't do anything about it, which was not fun. But so I think we should pursue this as written to see what we can get out of it and see what the value is in it, and then and what is defined by a dangerous dog or a loose cow, whatever it happens to be. So that's my point. Thank you.
I remember helping to wrangle a loose cow in Cherry Creek when I lived there. By the Lighthouse Church, my first cow my cat ever saw. She freaked out. Okay, so if that's your position, then we would do a motion if this was defeated. Director Roth, go ahead.
I don't have a problem looking at it this year either. I was just trying to put off costs until the next year, but we do have coverage. It's just that we could look to see if there's something better available. So I'm good with, if we want to withdraw my motion or however you want to do it.
Yeah, we could just quickly defeat it and then do a new one at that point.
Okay.
Any further comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Okay. All opposed? Sorry, got to remember what we're doing here. Defeated. And then Director Sparrow, do you want to move?
I will move that the committee of the whole direct staff to the proposed initiative case 17 animal control investigation of regional wide service for the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Seconded by Director Silda. Okay, any further comments? I would also like to ask, because Huwait has a deal with BCSPA, if we could see and explore if there's an option for us to opt in, if we can save money, then we would totally do that. Okay. Okay, seeing no other comments, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Okay, next up is item 18, Sprout Lake Community Parks for a Dixon Park Catwalk. Michael, please go ahead.
Thank you. So yeah, this is a pick for the Sprout Lake Community Parks, Dixon Park specifically. There's public swimming dock at that park, and to access that dock, there's a asphalt walkway there that's deteriorating and needs to be addressed. for public safety concerns. Two options that were looked at was, leaving that in place and just building around it and supporting it to create a better pathway. And that's what is being proposed here. There is an alternative that was also investigated, and that would be to pull that out and create more of an elevated boardwalk. And that would be a greater cost. So could be looked at if that's the preferred route, but happy to answer any questions on this.
Director Cote, please go ahead.
I would just like to make the motion for option 1 for the lesser cost one.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think we can have it referenced in the motion. So
Okay.
yeah, so we'll craft it so that it deals with the motion 1. That's the non-asphalt one? I can't remember.
That's just leaving the infrastructure in place
Yeah.
and building around it.
Rather than disturbing the environment by trying to take it out. So it would be just fixing this existing structure. Yes.
So it would be fixing the one that's there already, Michael?
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Next up is for Charlie, Sprout Lake Fire Protection, purchase of the snow blade. Please go ahead.
Yes, the fire department membership believes that they'd be better served by purchasing their own snow blade that they could put on their duty officer truck to provide a more efficient service for snow removal at the fire halls.
Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. So I move that the committee of the whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 19, Sprout Lake Fire Department, purchase of a snow blade in the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Any further comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. Not trying to prolong this meeting any longer, but there was a comments made about the amount of money that we were paying for snow removal because we had to have someone on call throughout the whole season. It was quite a large sum of money, so I'm looking at this definitely as cost saving. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Next up is Beaver Creek Fire Protection Truck 51 upgrade. Oh boy, Charlie, go ahead.
Yes, the fire department is looking at upgrading truck 51 to extend the life for another 5 years per the board's direction. And there'll be some costs incurred to do that. So I'm open to answer questions.
Director Rob?
Thank you. I'd like to move that. Let's see here, that the committee of the whole direct staff to include proposed initiative case 20 in the 2025-29 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Solda. Any further comments? Director Sparrow?
Thank you. I'm wondering, like last month, we decided not to go ahead with pursuing a new fire truck for Beaver Creek, sorry. And yet there was no word at that time that this truck needed any sort of upgrade. It was going to be in service 2 more years as the new fire truck was being built. But since we decided not to go with a new fire truck, all of a sudden this fire truck came with a cost of $200,000. Can somebody explain to me how within 1 month we went from a functioning fire truck that's going to work for the next 2 years while one was being built to one that needed $200,000 upgrades in order to service it for 5 more years? It'd be more cost effective to actually buy a used fire truck from municipality and upgrade that. Thank you.
Charlie, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think that the thought process was that we weren't going to put good money into a truck that we were preparing to get rid of. That being said, having been told to keep it in service, it does require some work be done on it. And we'll see what we can get done. At this point, the initial thing has been found that no one's prepared to do the work for us. So we're spinning our wheels a bit there. But yeah, we're prepared to search out, and that was one of the alternative options, was to investigate an alternative replacement. And that may be, in fact, what happens.
So looking at this, between 25 and 30-year fire truck. How does this affect Banfield and other fire departments in the valley that want to extend their trucks 30 years? Will they go through the same sort of upgrade process and the same costing for their departments?
We have found with the factory underwriters service that they look at the individual fire departments. Banfield recently upgraded theirs, but Banfield has very few fire calls and is much simpler service to operate. Beaver Creek is a much busier service, puts many more hours on the truck, and it's held to a higher standard.
Dr. Cote?
Thank you. With the information that staff have provided us regarding the cost of a new vehicle going up 25%, I think it is, in the very near future, I was definitely supporting getting a new truck now. I don't believe in buying secondhand vehicles for our services. I think that we need to go with new equipment and have your fire department, because they also have to train on these new apparatus. And I think that this is throwing good money away, upgrading an existing, it's not failing, but aging apparatus. And I would have supported a new fire truck going forward, but I'll support whatever the board wants. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Roth?
I just wanted to say that we already approved a motion that really isn't up for discussion now, that we have up to 3 years for a truck replacement. So that is what this is about, is that not right? And I'm okay with improving it. Maybe we can even extend it longer later. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments? Dr. Sparrow, go ahead.
Just a quick clarity for Director Roth, 30-year lifespan is a maximum lifespan for a fire truck. So you've got 5 years out of this thing, no matter how much money you put into it, and then it's going to be done under fire underwriters.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? Uh-oh.
Let's do that again.
Okay, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9. Ah, yes, thank you, Kristen, sorry. Then all opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. 8, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, last of the non-in-camera, so the open items is item 21, Cherry Creek Community Park, Maplehurst Park Access Upgrade Project. Please go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. So this pick is for creation of a access from Cherry Creek Community electoral area into Maplehurst Park. This is putting it on the 2025 work plan, and the biggest hurdle is, or there'd be quite a bit of design work involved in application through the province. The biggest one would be a creek crossing, pedestrian creek crossing over Kitsuxis Creek, hopefully within the park boundary, but then also the expansion of trail along the Crown lands within Cherry Creek electoral area as well. So I think it's laid out a little bit that this is likely be a multi-year project to complete, but getting going as the focus on the work plan for this park would be the proposal. Happy to answer any questions on this one.
Thank you. Dr. Sparrow?
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, it will be a multi-year process where we have to go through and acquire the land and get it all access to, and then build a parking lot and the bridge. So it should be done by March, no problem. Don't know what year it would be though. But I'd like to make the proposal that the committee of the whole direct staff to include proposed initiative 21 Cherry Creek Maplehurst Park Access Upgrade Project, the 2025-2029 draft ACRD financial plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Roth. Any further comments? Okay, comments, Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll support this, but I have a question that asking why Great Central Lake boat launch is not one of the picks for 2025. Thank you.
Who would cover that? Boat launch? Jenny, is that you? Go ahead.
Thanks through the chair. That is a really good question. We can go back and do that. We are limited in the amount of staff time that we have. So when we're developing our work plans and the picks, we're really looking at the projects that we've had on the list for a while. And Maplehurst Park is one of those ones where we've had a change in direction, where we were going to be looking at the other access off Willow, and that really morphed as we did the Parks Management Plan. And we wanted to make sure that we had clarity and support to move forward on this investment, which will take significant staff time. Great Central Lake is still within the 5-year plan. It's just not on the 2025.
Go ahead, Director Cote.
Thank you. So it's been pushed off a couple of years now already. I believe I've been pushing to saying that, hopefully I will see this on the 2025 year budget. It's in the strategic plan to do some work there. It's increasing popularity. There is issues out there that are safety issues. And I'd really like to see a reassessment and get this back on the 2025 schedule. Sprout Lake doesn't get a lot of work done out in it. So really asking for some support here. Thank you.
For the chair, this is the beginning of the budget process. So thank you for that feedback. We will take a look at that and see what we can do. And we can look at that as part of the financial plan and see what we need to take back.
You might want to follow up in an EA directors meeting or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, with that in mind, Director Roth, please go ahead.
I just wanted to know if we can talk about ongoing or previously approved initiatives once we finish with the Maplehurst Park issue.
We will subject that to a vote after we get through the
One comment.
Okay. So with that, well, if it's just one comment, or is it a prospective action?
You guys paying your hydro bill?
The generator should be kicking in. We'll take a minute. There we go.
Let there be light.
There we go.
That's exciting, but we're gonna have to reconnect.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was our answer to Susan. Yeah.
Hey, we're back. So
I think we can still hear you.
yeah, our power died. So Susan's power is out too.
No, she's right there at the
No,
window.
she's
frozen.
frozen.
Lavanna, can you hear us? Yeah.
I can hear you.
I can hear you out here.
Okay. So I think, your camera is now off though, Director Jack. And I'm gonna guess you're right that Susan probably lost power.
Yeah, the cameras just need to reinitialize. Looks like the audio's faster though.
Oh, there you go. We got you now.
Yeah, so yeah, it takes some time for the camera system to boot up. Thank you, Rich. This is a good redundant system.
If anyone else has questions.
Could we get someone, Janice, could you text Susan to maybe connect on her phone? She might still have connectivity over the cell network.
Yeah, I'll try and do that.
Okay, so we will talk about the ongoing ones when she arrives. So with that in mind, if we could have a motion to close the meeting to discuss the in-camera items. Oh, sorry.
Hold on the last one.
We don't need to do that. Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the Maplehurst Park Access Upgrade Project? All opposed? And motion carried. Thank you. Okay.
We'll bring it back. I think that's already noted. But you can't make.
You can motion. So we'll make it 21A.
Okay, I'd like to have consideration of the Great Central Lake boat launch
Upgrade project?
upgrade. Yeah,
Okay.
thank
Okay.
you.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Solda. Any further comments? Go ahead, Director Sparrow.
Exactly where is that launch? Is that where's by the lodge there, or is that further around where there used to be the log dump area? Okay.
Okay, any further comments? Dr. Solda, go ahead.
I think it's a really good thing to look into this one because the accessibility committee has, there's people out there that have accessible problems and that boat launch has been targeted as one of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay. Seeing no more comments, all those in favor of 21A? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, now can we have a motion to close the meeting? Thank you, Director Coots, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments?
Point of order, we just need to look at question period.
Oh, I thought we did that at the end, because we'd reopen the meeting, would we not?
No, but we stopped the live streaming.
Oh, okay.
So just give me 1 second while I check the email.
Okay.
There's nothing there.
There is nothing in the
There's
email.
nothing in Zoom and there's
And
nobody
nothing
in
in
the
Zoom.
audience. Thank you.
Okay. Now that we have a motion to close the meeting, all those in favor? All opposed? So the main power came back on. So our cameras are reinitializing, but we are now in camera.